I think we're live.
All right.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let's see. Let's change this view. So, oh, that's one of the problems with doing it this way is that I get an echo with the audio. So let me go here and mute this over here. Oh, there's so many things to think about and worry about. So we're two dental nerds, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, except for the fact that we're not only going to be talking about teeth. That's what happens with dentistry, I think, is that they're always just tooth centric, when you and I both know, as clinical dental hygienists for over 10 years, both of us, and I think I was almost 20 years before I hung up my scalers and went on the speaker trail, that it's not just about the teeth, and that dental decay and some of these other dental conditions are very rarely just surface conditions, and they come from the interior and your just overall health. So you have a website. I hate to call it a website because it's more like a destination. It's like
Ooh,
the Fiji Islands, or is
I
it the
like it.
Fuji Islands? I don't know. So it's
Fuji Apple, Fiji Island.
yes, so it's one of those. Let me adjust this so that I'm not always looking to the side. So let's just talk about that for a second. I think a lot of people know that I'm just a dental hygienist and I can't stop, but I don't know that people know who you are, especially.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on today. I'm excited. I too am a dental hygienist. My name's Carrie Ibbotson, and I like to say I'm a oral health coach. No, dental. Yeah, how does it go? When I'm not filming, it doesn't really want to come
It's a
out.
new title. No.
Oral health coach by passion, dental hygienist by training. So
There you go.
I was a dental professional for years and just continue to see these problems. And I think if I wouldn't have had my years as a being a child in the chair and then seeing as a dental assistant how things just people didn't have the opportunity to actually learn. I'm in my early 20s and I'm like going to the gym and I'm working with personal trainers, and then I go to work and I see people failing because they're not getting any personal training. They're doing the work, but they're not seeing the results, and there's no like intervention in between the two of them. And I did dental assisting because I thought I wanted to go into dental hygiene. And it was during that time that I was like, ooh, I really want to personal train the consumers, because I was working in hundreds of offices as a sub. And it was just like this reoccurring event that I continually saw. And I would just get curious, and I like to talk to people. So it was the perfect position to be able to just ask questions. I'm like, what did your hygienist tell you today? And they're like, oh, they said I should be brushing better. I should be flossing, or, use a fluoride toothpaste. And it was just that same cycle was repeated over and over again. I'm like, did anybody put a toothbrush in your hand? Did they show you like where the stain was building up? Did they help you see anything? And I think I got really lucky with being able to work with dentists who were healers in the very, very beginning. It was such a blessing, because had I not had that,
Right.
I wouldn't have had like a really high bar set, so that when I went into all these other offices, I was like, this is trash. And this is what the general public
Right.
thinks is what dentistry is about. And so,
Or worse, they think that there's something wrong, but they keep going because their insurance probably is saying these are the doctors that you have access to. And they're not different. They're all just the same kind of practice. And the hygienists are all just floss nags. And it's hard to find a good pair. The dental hygienist is not often attracted to a dentist who is of the same mindset. I was completely attracted to complete opposites. It's my
until you
MO.
knew why and what, right? Like that natural attraction, right? You're bringing up something that a lot of people don't even think about on the clinical side. Yeah, the
It was a
changing of
challenge
that
to try
paradigm.
to get the doctor on
Mhm,
board with me.
mhm,
And it was not a challenge, it was a
mhm,
head-butting kind of a
mhm.
situation.
Yeah, and people would ask me, I'd come in as a temp and they're like, please come rescue us. We need your help with all of the systems that you know how to bring into place and the phone skills that you have and the people skills, like, come help us. We need you. And so then it became like I was always going into places that were needing rescued, right? Instead of things that were filling my cup. And that became really evident to me towards the latter part of my career, because again, things that we don't even think about outside of the clinical care is people that often go into healthcare are broken and they want to fix other people, because they have that inherent need to fix something, but they don't know how to fix themselves. Right. So it's like hurt people. Well, broken people try and fix people, and they often go under the cloak of a clinician in order to.
Do they try to fix people or do they try to rescue people from the poor care that they had gotten?
I think it's a bit of both, right? Because it's like, well, let me work really hard on cleaning your mouth when I'm there. Let me get all this off and let me make sure with all my scalers, and I'm going to sharpen everything a lot and I'm going to rescue you. It's my tools that that will heal you instead of your home care will heal you, right? I think dentistry is really based on the work that the clinician does versus the help that the consumers get, which is what I continue to see, which is what I wanted to start a coaching the consumer for, back to kind
Yeah,
of swing that all back around, right? Like,
right.
that's why I wanted to be part of that problem. And then I get into this piece of it, right? Like, then moving into clinical dentistry, I can go on about the things that have just happened in my clinical career, where I finally managed to have a clinical setting where I coached my patients before I ever cleaned them. Right. So I got that piece to the puzzle. And then I was like, oh, this is good. Now I got this. Now we can go to consumers. And then I went to consumers, and that piece of the puzzle still remained really true. But then, because I wasn't so busy focusing on clinical care, I could then move into all sorts of the other stuff, which is how we became involved. And
Well,
Julie and I
right.
came
So
involved,
you started out talking about different toothbrushes and toothpaste, and suddenly you're like, well, wait a minute, we've got to also do nasal hygiene, because if you can't breathe through your nose, your mouth is going to crash. And so you have this whole xylitol nasal spray story, and you have this oral breathing story, and you have myofunctional therapy story, and it's just all really kind of coming together for you, because it isn't just about a toothbrush and floss. And most people only know that from their dental hygiene visits. So that's why I'm so excited to be part of your oral health coaching website. Can you say it really fast? What's the name of the actual name of the URL?
it's just oralhealthcoaching.com.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, everyone keeps trying to, it's been through many different iterations. Everybody's like, you can't just call it oral health coaching. I'm like, but what else is it? Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is. And it's
Yeah.
what I've kind of known that it's always supposed to be for 15 years. I've been online now for 13 years, Shirley. 13 years teaching
Wow.
the consumers. But here's the thing. As I recognized that these myofunctional issues were big deals, and ties, and then it moves into sleep, then it moves into breathing, like, it's just so big and it's so deep. Nonetheless, if you don't control the biofilm, if you don't learn about the brushing, if you don't learn about the techniques, if you don't learn about the disinfection, if you don't understand those things, you will brush over those as a human, and you'll move straight into these other big, overwhelming pieces to the puzzle. But because you haven't taken that time to learn about biofilm management and pH control, you're still in that like hurried rush, frantic situation, versus what I believe to be true and what I've kind of hung my hat on, because I don't teach myofunctional therapy. I don't teach
Right.
sleep. And I'm not going to do those things because they're way more complicated. But I do know that the masses still need help with that biofilm management, pH control training, holding hands,
It's part of the
talking about
whole
things.
equation.
It
It's
really is.
part of the whole thing
It is.
of optimized health.
Yeah.
So that's a really critical piece. The more I learn about this whole baby thing, it's just a mind bender. And the more it reinforces the idea that the mouth is the beginning of all health. If it's not functioning right, you can't breathe through your nose, which is the second piece of this whole puzzle. And so making sure that the mouth is working, regardless of the age, doesn't matter whether you have teeth or not. All of that has to be optimized before the rest of the body can be healthy. I'm working with a chiropractor. I'm working with a nutritionist. I'm working with somebody specializing in sleep. I'm with other people and other groups of people to address this from here. And then you have to work on the things that come because this isn't working correctly. And then you have to go back like this. So it goes like this and it goes like that. So
It's like
all of
unpeeling an onion and
yes,
growing an onion all at once,
yes,
right? It really is,
yes.
because there's so many different layers, and then underneath a layer is maybe even a sub-layer, and then you might need to just like put some stuff in place here to then move over here, right? Like I think it
Yep.
was you when we talked about different pieces of the puzzle, and you're like, really? I think it's like a globe. Wasn't that you? Where it's more
Probably.
like a sphere instead of a flat,
Yeah.
linear stage, because you got to kind of
Yeah.
figure out this side and then kind of work on this side, and then this might need some
And
help, and
right. And they don't all necessarily see one another, just like,
especially if you're not asking the right people the right questions. I just had a very, 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 very close friend who, their daughter, I have said their whole life, like, she's tied, you need to, and they're like, well, if she was tied, the dentist would say something. I'm like, the dentist wasn't you're not asking the right person. You know what I do. You know what I do. And so I saw him just the other day, and I was like, why are you home today? Like, it was a school day and a work day. And they were like, oh, blah, 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 had their tongue tie released. And I went,
really?
like, this is, and it's going to be like a significant one. And I go, myofunctional therapy? They're like, no, we asked the dentist and we asked the surgeon, and both of them said that there was no prehabilitation that could be done, and you just need to do it. And then once, 6 to 8 weeks, when you're done, then you can start like exercises. And I was like,
welcome to 1967. It's just like that. It's just so terrible.
And
So
like very close to my world, very, very close to my world.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I go, and that's the problem. She's like, well, and so then the mom, like, kind of, as because I get fired up, and I'm very close to this family, so I can be a little more honest than some other situations. And I'm like, she's like, but I asked, and I go, yeah, but
you got the wrong answer, and you knew
and
it was the wrong answer. You just didn't know what to do about it.
Yeah, you are in the same matrix that so many consumers are in, that they don't recognize if they're asking the right question to the wrong person. And what are some of the screening tools that we can put in place so that you can gain your, a deeper understanding of what the actual reality is, right? Because everybody is so quick to want to have an answer or to need an answer, right? And so sometimes that's part of the hard part, is just go, can we just take a deep breath, and can we look at these other things, and can you figure out how to ask a provider screening questions to see if they're even,
how do you do that? What's the last magazine that you read? What's the last conference you were at?
Well, that's what I always say, like, what study clubs do you belong to?
Yeah.
And what happens if you are dealing with a a case that, you come up to roadblocks. Like, do you have other dental professionals that, or even other, medical professionals that are helping you work through these cases together? And I think that's the really
If
frustrating part.
there's no collaboration except to the oral surgeon, there's a lot missing. There's a lot missing. And the more I'm into this, the more obvious it is that the body needs to be included. So a massage therapist or a chiropractor or a craniosacral person or a nutritionist. You just need to have more supportive things. You can't just say, eat your vegetables and call it a day. It just doesn't work that way. We're too far down the hole of health, of negative health, of this
Of
long
dis-ease, right?
disease or this long death span. My good friend's father just died of Alzheimer's last week. It was a 6-year agonizing, and the last 2 months he lived in 3 different locations. They had to move this poor guy around. It's just ridiculous. If he'd have brushed his teeth, would his life been better? I don't know. I don't want to say that, but I do want to say that it takes more than just 1 or 2 people. It really just takes a team right now. We've all graduated into these silos, and we have to get these silos to be able to communicate with one another. There was a question today, I think this morning or yesterday. This mother has a 5-year-old with an adenoid that is blocking 90% of his airway. So his sinus airway, right? So the adenoids are like right here, right, going right here in the middle. And it was blocking. So he has to breathe with his mouth open. So his adenoids probably wouldn't have grown had he not been oral breathing in the first place. So something was amiss at the front side of this thing. So the kid is 5, and what you can do with a 5-year-old and is to look at their teeth, and if they're not spaced, dramatically spaced, like holy moly, all of her teeth are like a picket fence, you can rest assured that there's a problem with the tongue. So you should start to see that spacing by age 3. If your child is 3 and mouth breathing, you need to see somebody about that. And if the dentist is not telling you to see a myofunctional therapist, you need to kind of take that on your own. And it's hard to do that. I belong to a lot of Facebook groups, and I sound like a broken record because it also sounds like I think everything can be fixed with tongue tie release. That's not really it, but it's a piece of this puzzle. It's a piece of the sphere that needs to be addressed. If it's not, you can't have a smooth life. If you're not breathing through your nose, you're breathing in too big of particles to go down into your lungs. And then your adenoids and your tonsils are in charge of cleaning that air. And those particles are detrimental to your overall health. So if you just kind of think about just that alone, and then wonder, how can you close your mouth? And how do you close your mouth when you're sleeping? Every now and then somebody will go, yeah, I fall asleep like this because I know I have to keep my mouth shut. And I'm like, how do you know your arm stays there all night?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, have you ever, and that's when you ask people, like, they're like, oh, I check in on my child. And I said, so your child has 10 hours of sleep time. How many minutes of that 10 hours would you say you've really witnessed? And what about when you're asleep? Right?
Yeah.
Like when you're asleep is when they should really be asleep. And so that tossing and turning, or the butts up in the air, or all the other things are probably happening around that same time. So unless you have a camera on your child and you're filming them all night, you don't know what they're doing.
You don't know.
You have a
right.
snippet. You have a thought, but
Yep. You can check the pillow and see if it's wet. Well, if their mouth is closed when you go in there and the pillow's wet, the mouth was open a minute ago. It's that kind of thing, which is why, I belong to a Facebook group about dental decay. And somebody had posted that they were surprised that there were no Facebook groups about mouth breathing. And I was like, okay, then I'll do it. And so we have only 277 members, but it's a Facebook group for people who are mouth breathing. It's called Mouth Breathing Littles and Bigs. And so if you're 45, if you're 14, if you're 4, if you're 1, this is the group where you can get some answers. And there's a progression, right? You have to get the nose clean before you can get your mouth shut. If your nose can't get clean, or if your face is all crooked from growing crooked, it's really an important function and a feature of good oral hygiene. And I don't know that people talk about that enough.
And so many people don't recognize that the magic in nasal hygiene comes when the xylitol is added in, right? So many people
Exactly.
use it, the
Like a
people
saline
that are
spray.
on that
It's
are
no
more health
drugs.
conscious, they have started to see, the discussion about nasal hygiene, but they're not necessarily understanding why that xylitol component is so important to
Well,
it.
let's just spend like 2 seconds on that, because there is a real competing problem right now, and that is the iodine nasal sprays that have come onto the scene, and silver. So those two are awesome if you're sick, because they will carpet bomb the entire microbiome of the sinuses. The xylitol component is milder, and it supports good oral microbiome, or nasal microbiome. There's a microbiome in your mouth, there's one in your gut, there's one in your stomach, there's one on your skin, there's one in your eyes. There's many, many, many different groupings of bacteria that have to live together for health. And the sinus one cannot be just carpet bombed with some of these other kind of things. The xylitol promotes the non-disease promoting. It's kind of crazy. I almost shouldn't say it because I'll probably get
In trouble.
blacklisted or something. But it does help promote some of the commensal bacteria that belong there, that promote healthy.
It helps starve the bad and feed the good. As weird as that sounds,
Yep.
it's a balance. And that's why people are like, oh, use coconut oil for everything. I'm like, but you're killing the good bacteria too. And you can't have a sterile environment. It's why Listerine doesn't work for long periods of time. If you need it for like a shock, there's a bleach treatment for people who are heavy into cavity and candida and fungal issues as well. There's a bleach rinse that you can do. It's a part A and a part B. It's also a short-term solution for a bigger problem because you're trying to shock the mouth. And then you need to really focus on the good bacteria, because you need that good bacteria to get stronger, so it pushes out that, like, there's only so much room for bacteria, and so the good bacteria will overgrow itself and it will fester out that bad bacteria. But if you mess with that balance,
it'll squeeze everybody right out.
All
right, so we've gone a little bit over 15 minutes, so thank you so much. Say your website one more time.
oralhealthcoaching.com. So if you are noticing that your kids are having decay in the front teeth area, that is a really big indicator that they have a mouth breathing issue or a low tongue posture, which will keep a mouth open. And part of that balance that we're talking about right now is needing to have thin saliva. If Shirley and I tested our mouths right now, chances are we would be acidic because we've been talking. So we're getting rid of all of our thin saliva. Hopefully we have enough good bacteria to bring that balance back. But if we don't understand that piece to the puzzle, we don't know how to get that overpopulation stuff going. So that's really what, so many of these random pieces where you're like, what does this have to do with it? Well, the rabbit hole's deep. So oralhealthcoaching.com. We have a course that you can buy anytime. We have a membership that is like a community that comes together that when the doors are open and closed, you can come into that as well. So if you're needing something right now, there's always the course. And then when the membership opens, you can come in there with us as well, or you can wait until the membership opens and come in and use the course. But if you buy the course, you have lifetime access to the course. So it's very
Awesome.
exciting. And we have a ton of Shirley in there doing great, cool videos that really help break things down and then give you some step-by-step things that you can be doing at home to help slow the process down so that you can recognize some of these things that you just might not be understanding right now that are really contributing to the problem.
Super duper.
Thanks for
So
having
I'm
me on.
Shirley Gutkowski from Primal Air, where we work with the muscles in the snoring complex to help you breathe easier and better and smarter and optimize your performance and your overall health. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for leaving a note if you'd like, and thanks for the thumbs up, and thanks for the subscribing. Woohoo!
See you guys.